Well, good morning. Today is June 21st, 2016, and I'm interviewing Idris Bridgeforth at Taylorville. Mr. Bridgeforth is 44 years old, having been born on June 29th, 1972. My name is Sue Burkholder, and I will be the interviewer. Would you please state for the recording in what war or what time period you served and what branch of service you served?
I served in the United States Army Reserve and Army during that time. It would be considered Operation Desert Storm, Desert Shield during that period of time, 1989 to roughly 91, 92, I believe.
And what branch of service were you?
United States Army.
Okay. All right. Well, I'd like to start with just a little bit of biographical data, just some details about when you were younger. And would you tell us, please, like where and when you were born?
I was born in Chicago, Illinois in 1972. My parents, Mr. H. Bridgeforth Jr., deceased, and my mother, Maxine Bridgeforth, she's still living. We grew up on the south side of Chicago, relatively a middle-income family. My father went to school in the south, college in the south, so he worked as a chemist for Whitco Chemical Company back then. My mother, she was a stay-at-home mom. I'm next to the baby boy out of 5 siblings. I have an older sister, and I have one brother in Texas. My baby brother still resides in Chicago as well with my sister, and I have one brother deceased. We grew up as normal kids. By the time I was 7, I went to live with my grandmother, my paternal grandmother on my father's side, for about 4 or 5 years. So I grew up, I'm pretty much like a big city country boy. I always tell people that because even though I was born in Chicago, I grew up in the South. So, you know, in Birmingham during that time with my grandmother, she had like a acre of land. So I planted my own corn and my peas, and so I knew what it meant to break a back, as they say. Then I came back to Chicago for high school, graduated Julian High School in 1990, I should say. And then from there, I just wanted to go off into the military, pursue an avenue that my uncle Sonny had did. He retired as a colonel in the United States Army Reserve. So I wanted to follow those footsteps. So I have a military background, not just on my mother's side, but also on my father's side as well.
So why did you choose the specific branch of military?
I think I might have been about 10 or 11, and I think we were at a family function or something in Louisiana. That's where my mother is from. And he came dressed in this green outfit, you know, and it just caught my eye, and he had all these ribbons and medals on it, and I was like, that's what I want to do. But he told me, he said, this isn't what you want to do. Stay in school, go to school, be in school. So I was an AB student, you know, but it never left my mind that I want that uniform. That's what I wanted, you know. Something about the way it was, like it was tailor-made to fit him, to suit him, so to speak. The way it was cut, he was like, yeah, I want one of those. And then he had all these, as a kid, you didn't know what the ribbons were, but he had these little shiny ribbons and things like that. I was like, and I want all of those that he has. So he explained to me what some of the ribbons were during that time. So during that time, I think he had his expert in grenades, expert in weaponry with the AR-15, which is what we used, his airborne wings and air assault wings. So all that shiny stuff and these ribbons, and then he had at that time, my uncle was he was a second lieutenant. So I said, no, that's what I'm gonna do. So I just locked it in my head, and when I got to be that time, and that's what I chose to do.
Well, when you first signed up, where did you go in, or what did you go into?
When I first signed up, I signed up back in June of '89, and that was my junior year of high school. I still remember Sergeant Barbosa. That was our recruiting officer. I met with him. He looked at me. I did the tape test, all that stuff, and he was like, "You too smart to be going into the service." I said, "Yeah, a lot of people tell me that, but I'm going to do it anyway." My parents weren't really happy the first time I told them about it, but they was like, "We'll let you do the reserves." So I signed up for the reserves, and upon completion or graduating high school, I had college offers, full ride scholarships, but I was just burnt out of school. I was tired of school. I just didn't want to do it anymore. But that didn't stop me from pursuing my education goals, neither though. So I went head on and got into the reserves, and I went to basic training in Fort Knox, Kentucky. That was a unforgettable 8 weeks. We weren't quite sure. Coming in on a bus load, it's maybe about 250 of us coming in, and here I go looking at this red clay again. That was a sight for sore eyes, but we made it through. Doing basic training, it was like being in a camp, I guess you would say, sort of, kind of. That's the way I looked at it. It was easy for people to deal with it, but we had some guys there, 1 or 2 guys, that it didn't sit well with them, so we say they kind of broke. So they got discharged out because they just couldn't take it. Not just the physical training of it, but I guess the mental aspect of it as well. It's kind of tough because I think during that time the war was going on, so a lot of the guys, me included, was kind of scared of, like, okay, what's going to happen? Are we just leaving basic training, going straight in? What was going on? We didn't quite grasp it then, but our drill sergeants, now they call them cadre sergeants, I believe, but our drill sergeants, they kept us focused, kept a lot of us in tune. Getting into top shape was one of the major aspects of it, of basic training. It wasn't just the history aspect of it, or being able to fire a weapon. It was about being able to be physically fit, not just, I call it completeness, mind, body, and soul, being fit all the way around. So they help mold us into true soldiers. So I still remember the 3 hills: heartbreak, agony, and misery. And that's what they were called: heartbreak, agony, and misery. And you felt it. You will start with heartbreak. It's going to break your heart because the incline to it was something totally different. You wasn't expecting. You think of a regular hill, think of it as a ladder, pretty much going straight up and down. Misery is trying to get down it, but then as soon as you come down it, you got to go right back up another. Same way. Then agony was, you pretty much just gonna roll. But we got through it. About 8 weeks of training. When I left there as the platoon leader, also expert in weaponry, hand in grenades, and in the AR-15. So I enjoyed basic training. It was fun. So one of the better times.
Were any of the instructors in basic memorable to you? That you can share?
My instructors, they ridiculed a lot of us from the city. If you was from Chicago, you was the Chi-Town guy. If you was from Detroit, you the Motown guy. If you from New York, you the Yorker. So we get picked on the most because we were from the big cities. A lot of the guys doing our platoons or in our squads were from small little towns. So we kind of stood out to them. And my drill sergeant, Johnson, as a matter of fact, now I remember about it, Drill Sergeant Johnson, he came from Chicago. And I played sports in high school. Track and field was one of them. And I beat a state record. So I guess he kind of figured I was coming. So he was good, but I can't say the pressure or the stress that was put on us. It was more motivation. It was more of a motivational factor. The reason he stayed on us as much, because much was required of you during that time. You know, this was pretty much like chaos back then. You know, looking at 1989, 90, 91, we didn't know what was really going on, you know. So it was like, but it was motivation as well to say, okay, yeah, if you was motivated to do that, you can be motivated to do this. And then I just kept remembering about my Uncle Sonny. If he can do it, I can do it.
So when basic training was over and you moved on, did you do some advanced training?
Yes, I went from Fort Knox, Kentucky to Fort Benjamin Harrison, or Fort Ben Harris in Indiana. That base is no longer there no more, from my understanding. It's been some years back. I think maybe a year after I left, they closed that base down. That was one of the bases that was closed. I went there for administration skills, personnel administration. When I went in, I was still up under the reserve title. So my company, or my group, which was up out of Glenview Naval Air Station in Illinois, I was there pretty much the admin specialist. Kept all the records and things that day. So I did 13 weeks of training there. And since it was like right outside of Indianapolis, I had family there. So it was like being back home. So on my little leave passes, I can go there, or needed to rent a car and come back to Chicago. So it was fun. I met a couple of guys that I went to. Well, actually, we didn't go to school with. We competed against each other through state competitions, either track and field, doing debates, things of that nature. They were in the military as well, you know, doing different things. I think a couple of them was in the Navy. So there at Fort Ben Harrison, you had a mixture of other different branches. So I got to intertwine with them. Met a couple of good friends there. So stayed in contact with each other.
So what was your job assignment then as you completed the specialized training?
When I finished specialized training, I went back to HHC 158. That was the headquarters company of the aviation group, the Blackhawks, which was stationed out of Glenview. So we were pretty much a chopper unit for the Army. Hueys, things of that, not Apaches, little commandos. I pretty much kept all the records, pretty much like military records, coming in, those who signed up new for the unit, things of that nature, who has which duty assignments, things of that. Kept up with life insurance policies, things of that, educational options, benefits. Those who were going to transition out of the service, out of the reserves completely, or those who were going to go from reserve duty to active duty. I think I was there for about 4 months before I went to what's called FUSAR. FUSAR is full-time United States Army Reserve Duty. And so what that pretty much entailed was I was pretty much like a full-time active duty administration specialist for my unit. So I was there, that was my job, Monday through Friday, 7:30 to 3:30. So I got to work well with my sergeant, which was my supervisor, my staff sergeant. Get work well with the company commanders and things of that nature. So I kind of got to know the ins and outs of the program, and so I think I did that for maybe 6 months, and I pretty much made it up in my mind that no, I'm going back. I like the active duty side of it. You know, the time that I did in basic training and in AIT, that's what I wanted to do. That helped made up my mind. And so by that time, I told my mom about it. My dad was like, "Go for it. That's what you want." My mom was like, "No, you get school." I was like, "I'm not gonna do school." I said, "I'll get school later," which I did. So I went head on, got with the recruiting sergeant again, Sergeant Barbosa, because I stayed in contact with him, and he got me transitioned over to active duty. So that was back in 91, 92, I believe, 1991, 92. So I went back on active duty side of the house, and those times that I did spend there were great. I couldn't pass it up. I think when I came back in, I didn't come back in as administration as a 75 Bravo. I came back in as medical. So when I left the unit to go and pursue my duties full time, I went and got stationed at Fort Sam Houston, Texas, the medical capital for the Army. So I went there for, that was 13, 15 weeks, something like that. And that was for 92 Bravo, and that's a medical lab technician. I think during that time they were doing, excuse me, recruiting bonus. So a lot of guys, a lot of people, I should say, signed up for it, and you received a bonus after you complete it, because they were looking for people in that field during that time. A lot of people, when they sign up through the recruiting office, they get asked, okay, what do you want to do? Me, I just wanted to be in the Army. That was it. But they have these job titles or MOSs, and they ask you, okay, well, they got a need for this, so if you sign up for it and you complete the training, you get this bonus. And it works for a lot of people, and then it helps them with their job choices later on in life. That's another thing. It's a good way to get the education that you need, but you provide a service back to your country. And I think that's one of the best things that you can do. So I went and did 13 to 15 weeks, something like that, in Fort Sam Houston, Texas. That was a very hot place. I wasn't used to that type of heat. I can't really say dry, but it was in between. And then there I met my best friend there. He came from Colorado. That was John. I think he had just came over from the reserves as well, and we pretty much stuck it out together. We excuse me, we went from Fort Sam Houston together to Fort Lewis, Washington, which was my duty station. Texas was good, you know. Went to Mexico like most people do, you know. You're right there, why not? Hung out, partied in San Antonio, you know. I'm not too much of a trouble guy, so I don't do crowds very well. So we pretty much just kept to ourselves, barbecue, things of that nature. And then we went up to Fort Lewis, Washington, and then from there he got assigned to Alaska, and I stayed there at Fort Lewis, Washington. So it was pretty fun. So my last years at Fort Lewis was an experience, I have to say. That's a whole different story there.
What were your duties at Fort Lewis?
At Fort Lewis, I was there stationed at Madigan Army Medical Center, Company B, Amen. I was there as a medical lab technician. I worked there in the hospital lab, and pretty much what we do is we draw blood, analyze it, give the results to the doctors to do with diagnosis and things of that nature. I moved up kind of quickly. Before I knew it, I was an E4, just actually promotable. I was able to make be able to make sergeant, you had to get a certain number of points, cutoff points, before you be able to be promoted to sergeant. So I was just pretty much in waiting and standby. I was able to go to school, finish out with schooling, stuff like that. So I did follow through with what my mom wanted. Then I got married, my first wife. She was coming from Baltimore, Maryland, Krista. That was my first wife. And she was there for AIT. She was there for LPN training. So they were housed in the same housing unit as we were housed in the barracks. And so I got to meet her, and she recognized me, or she, how we can say, fell in love with me before I even knew who she was, because I was a quiet person. Pretty much stayed in my room. If you wasn't somebody who I worked with, anything like that, I didn't really mess or get involved with you. But one night, a couple of my buddies, we were out at one of the clubs, and they was like, "Hey, that's the girl we was telling you about." And I'm like, "What?" And they was like, "The one who's been looking for you." I'm like, "Ain't nobody looking for me. I don't speak to nobody." It was like, "Yeah, she's the one right there." And so she came up, talked to me, and we just hit it off. As she say, she fell in love with me the first time she seen me walking from work one day, and I fell in love with her maybe about 2 weeks later. And we stayed together for about 5 years. She went back to Baltimore, and then I stayed there at Madigan for about another year or so after that, and then we divorced, we split up, and then I came back to Chicago. But Madigan was something different. I got to see a lot of things at Madigan, the good and the bad. People think that the military life is easygoing or it's too rough. It's a little bit of both. It's just like an everyday 9-to-5 job, really. Being there, you see the hurt. And during that time, we had the Special Forces group was right next to us, and so a lot of those guys would come in, or you see a lot of the veterans that's being treated, and being in the lab all day, you kind of want to know who are these people. So you go up to the different wards, the SICUs, to the medical ICUs, and you place a face with the name that you've been, dealing with all this time, and you get a chance to hear their stories too, or some of the things that they've been through, and it made me appreciate what I was doing. I really don't have any complaints about it. It just lets me know that the decisions that I did make, those were the decisions that was best for me. I liked that. I got to meet a couple of the older veterans from Korean War, some during World War II, because they'd come in there and get their monthly blood draws and stuff like that, and they'd say, "What's good, specialist?" Or they'd say, "What's good, doc?" So it's like you see those guys and you say, "Man, I made a difference." Well, they made a difference for all of us. So I kind of enjoyed it. If I had the chance to do it all over again, I still do it the same way I did it. I enjoyed it. In between all those times, though, I was able to get different trainings in. Like I told you earlier about my uncle with his jump wings and air assault wings. Well, I went back to go get mine too. So I think maybe a year before, 2 years before I got out of the military, I went to a family reunion and I showed up in my dress greens. My uncle was actually proud. I said, "I got those same wings you got." So that made us even closer, The people that you see, people you come across, it's an amazing feeling. And then to know that you're doing something not just for yourself, but for others, for your country, not just for your family, but for all families. It was truly a great experience. I couldn't pass it up, you know. But then being stationed there at Fort Lewis, that's a beautiful place if y'all ever get a chance to go. Not too far from Seattle. I got family there too. My oldest brother, Robert, he lives in Seattle. Yeah. You got the mountains, Mount Rainier, you got Spokane, Washington, you get Bremerton Naval Station, you got McCord Air Force Base, you can ski year round, you got everything there. When I was stationed there, because that's where I spent most of my active duty time at, I went down to Panama, so I got to hang out in Panama for a while. Stayed down there on leave for about 30 days. I enjoyed that. I got to see different parts of the country, different parts of the world. I did a little short stint up in Alaska. I just can't do the 3 months in the dark. That's no fun, but that was an experience. My time I spent in Georgia for my training there. That was like being at home because that's where my uncle was stationed at. Well, that's where he lives. So I enjoyed that. Just fun and peace. I can't really describe it any other way.
It sounds like it was very rewarding.
It was.
Did you you talked about going back to your family reunion?
Mm-hmm.
Did you have younger siblings or nieces and nephews that maybe looked up to you, and did you inspire them?
Actually, my oldest niece, that would be Keela. She saw the uniform and she went and joined her high school ROTC because of it. She didn't go into the service. She decided to go ahead on and pursue college, and she's into nursing. She's in Texas now. So, but it's just the thought of that uniform. The uniform is proud. The uniform meant something in our family, and it still does. I was on the phone about 2 days ago talking to my own daughter. She's in college now, but she said, "Dad, I see these pictures of you when, I remember these pictures of you in this green uniform." I said, "Yeah, that's a special uniform." She's like, "I'm thinking about getting into the service." The father side of me wants to say, "No, honey, don't do it." But the soldier side, the proudness that you come from when you wear the uniform, any uniform of any service, says, if that's where your heart is at, do it. So she says she's going to think about it. She's majoring in computer information systems, so everything is going technology-wise now, so she can serve her country that way.
While you were in, I know you said you didn't do a lot with go out a lot,
Mm-hmm.
but did you make friends that have lasted?
Yes, actually, I have 3 friends of mine from basic training. We still stay together. I think we're like the last 3 remaining. John was from from AIT in Fort Sumter Station, but I have Derek, Kev, and Tony, and we all are from the big city. We're the big city trios. We still keep in contact with each other in some shape, form, or fashion. Either if it's not just a 20-minute phone call, it's just a surprise visit. I think I'm the oldest one by maybe 2 months, but their kids are a little bit older than mine. I have the 21 and the 20-year-old. I think their kids are like 20, 27. So they get to come to Chicago more, and like when we go see each other, excuse me, our families know who we are right off the bat. So it never changes, and we know each other's families, not just the immediate families, but the uncles on their side, or so it's like it's one big happy family. Basic training was a place where you can go, you meet people because you have a common goal, a common idea, but you develop more than just a friendship. You develop family ties, and I have to say, the military was a tie that binded all of us together.
So you left service from Washington
Mm-hmm.
and went back to Chicago, I believe you said.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So how was it switching back to coming home? Was it difficult, or?
Doing my transition, it was totally different. It was difficult in a way, because when you leave the military and you now going into the public sector, it's a hard transition, because you're used to a structure, and then when you go and you interview and things of that nature, like back during that time, they didn't have a seamless transition for veterans to get back into the workforce. And then for those of us that happened to make it, it was a very hard thing for us to do, because a lot of places, they looked at it as being, okay, you're my veteran, okay, yes, we're glad, but you either overqualified for a lot of the positions that you may feel that you can be, apply for or be good at, or they didn't want to take the risk, because during that time, back in 95, 96, we were just hearing about post-traumatic disorders and things of that nature, so they didn't want to take the risk. So it was like being almost like doing the Vietnam era. When those soldiers came back, they were still shunned a little bit, but for those of us that did make it, I was fortunate to be one. A high school teacher, science teacher, he became principal, took a chance, and so I got a break. I got my foot in the door with the Board of Education and went from there. But it's not an easy road. But I think now with it's more commonplace, more common knowledge, a lot more understanding. A lot more of us veterans being in the workforce now can recognize and understand with the veterans coming home. The transition is a lot smoother. But then you're looking at about 20 years ago, wasn't so. 30 years ago, really wasn't. 40 years ago was even worse. So we've come a long way with that transition, and hopefully it can just get even better.
What would you say is the most positive thing that you took away from your experience in the service?
Positive? All of it to me was positive. I mean, we had our negatives, and you go through different situations and trying times, but all of it was positive, because it helped me to grow as an individual. It helped me to understand what it truly means to be an American, what it truly means to be a soldier, what it truly means for this flag. Just put it like that. What that flag truly means. This isn't just something that symbolizes a country, it symbolizes a family. And I look at it as the stars on that flag, not just being 50 stars for each state, but 50 families. Because when you're in that unit, that's what you got. 50 families. And they all depend upon each other. So that's why I look at it. All of them was positive.
Is there a message that you would like to leave for future generations who will either view or hear this interview?
Never lose sight of what you want. If you see a goal that you have in mind or that you think you want to attain or choose to attain, go for it. My thing is the military will be one of the best places. A lot of people criticize the military now. I don't. I think that's the best place for anybody. Go achieve it. Trust me, you will accomplish it.
All right. Is there was there a biggest challenge that you felt like you had while you were in the military? The biggest thing you had to overcome?
My biggest challenge was trusting my fellow soldier. When you grow up in Chicago on the South Side, and I grew up during the gang era, as they say, we didn't have a lot of trust. Even in the gang, there was no such thing as trust, and I was never part of that, thank goodness. But you never trusted anyone. You had trust in your family, and that's true, but outside of your family, you didn't trust anybody. In the military, especially during basic training, I'm glad I went, because it taught me I can trust anybody that's willing to share their blood for me. They give their life just like I'm going to give mine. My job is to protect them, and their job is to protect me. And that's the reason I say it goes beyond just that. It creates a family. He has my back and I have theirs, and we're going to protect this family. We're going to protect this country. This is our family.
If you look back over your whole military career, is there any one experience that just really sticks with you? Maybe even one that just solidified your thoughts of the course for your life?
Finally getting my parachute wings, my jump wings. I had to say that was my proudest moment, because as they say, your blood wings. That solidified it, because I was able to accomplish what I had set out as a kid, being 10 or 11, and seeing those same things on my uncle, and I was able to achieve it. My mother would say it would be me getting my education. I didn't let that stop, but for me, it was truly becoming a soldier.
Well, is there anything else that maybe we haven't covered that you would like to talk about today?
For anybody that's out there now and that's viewing this or will view it to come, the military is a great place. Let no one detract you from doing it, joining the service, and have fun, because it's a fun place to be. Yeah, you work hard, but trust me, the rewards are great.
Well, thank you so much for your time today, and I just want to let you know that we thank you very much for your service to our country.
Thank you.